Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear brothers and sisters listening on our YouTube channel and the brothers in the Masjid. Alhamdulillah, today our guest speaker is Mufti Huzaifa, who is the Imam of Plashet Grove Masjid and also a teacher at Darul Ulum London, which is in Chislehurst, Kent. Alhamdulillah, Mufti Huzaifa completed his alim course, Islamic degree at the IDA, Islamic Da'wah Academy in Leicester, and thereafter, alhamdulillah, furthered his studies and completed and became a mufti at the same institute. So alhamdulillah, we are very honored to have him. So I'd like to pass you over to Sheikh, to Mufti Sab, to say a few words, inshallah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي ونسلم على رسوله الكريم أما بعد فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في القرآن المجيد والفرقان الحميد يا أيها الذين آمنوا اجتنبوا كثيرا من الظن إن بعض الظن إثم وقال عليه الصلاة والسلام لا يموتن أحدكم إلا وهو يحسن الظن بالله وقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إياكم والظن فإن الظن أكذب الحديث صدق الله العظيم وصدق رسوله النبي الأمي الكريم ونحن على ذلك من الشاهدين والشاكرين والحمد لله رب العالمين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم. It is the tawfiq and the ability of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that once again He gave us the blessed month of Ramadan. We were able to witness the Ramadan of 1444. To be very frank, the month of Ramadan is not a month wherein we spend time listening to talks, lengthy talks. Rather, the month of Ramadan in reality is to spiritually connect ourselves and rekindle our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through our individual a'mal, through the recitation of the Quran, through dhikr, through dua, tawbah, taqwa. We connect ourselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But as the years went by, generations passed, the level in iman weakened, and the elders then implemented some advices during the day where a few words are shared so that it becomes a reminder for us of how to navigate our lives within the Ramadan and also out of the month of Ramadan. So in the few minutes, inshallah, we are together. I would like to share a few words. It is the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He made us from the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Any avenue, any juncture of our lives that we analyze and we contemplate in regards to, we will find the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala present. It was indeed the mercy of Allah that He created us from the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allah make us on the day of Qiyamah from amongst those individuals who become a means of comfort and pride for Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and save us from amongst those individuals who will be a form of inconvenience, hurt, and disgrace for Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Now, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted, after creating this insan and the human, Allah could have told us that I have given you the faculty of intellect, where you have aql, you have intellect, now go into the dunya and use this favor of the aql to work out what you need to do to be successful, and use that same aql and intellect to work out how you need to be to ensure that you do not become unsuccessful. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy was such that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't leave it to the insan to work out. Rather, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created different modes of hidayah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the two main modes and avenues of hidayah for the insan He created. Number one, Kitabullah, the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the practical example of the Kitabullah, of the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is the second mode of hidayah, which is Rijalullah, the men of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah sent the prophets. Allah sent Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, thereafter the Sahaba, the Tabi'een, the Ulama Rabbaniyeen, who are a practical living guidance for us of how to implement the guidelines that we find within Kitabullah, within the Quran. And if we are to study Kitabullah and Rijalullah, then we will find guidances for every juncture of our lives, from the moment we wake up till the moment we retire to sleep, from the moment we are born till we leave this dunya. Guidance is found within Islam for that individual who wishes to find guidance. And there is indeed guidance for us at every point of our life, what we need to do, what we need to refrain from. And this is the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that such detail can be found in Kitabullah and Rijalullah, which will assist us in becoming successful in this dunya and in the hereafter. Allah gave us Sufyan bin Uyayna rahimahullah. Sufyan bin Uyayna rahimahullah, he used to say that لَيْسَ الْعَاقِلُ الَّذِي يَعْرِفُ الْخَيْرَ وَالشَّرَّ, that who is a true intellectual in the eyes of Sharia, in the eyes of Islam, in the eyes of Quran and Hadith. So to explain this point, he says that a true intellectual is not he who يَعْرِفُ الْخَيْرَ وَالشَّرَّ, who has the knowledge of what pleases Allah and has the knowledge of what displeases Allah. That is not sufficient to be regarded as an aqil, as an intellectual. Rather, he says, وَلَكِنَّ الْعَاقِلَ الَّذِي يَعْرِفُ الْخَيْرَ فَيَتَّبِعُ. A true intellectual is he who, after knowing the stipulated guidelines of what pleases Allah, so after looking into Quran and Hadith, after looking into Kitabullah, Rijalullah, and understanding and having the knowledge of what pleases Allah, he does not suffice on that knowledge. فَيَتَّبِعُ. He gives place for this knowledge in his life. He implements that knowledge. وَيَعْرِفُ الشَّرَّ فَيَجْتَنِبُ. And he is made aware and he has the knowledge. He learns in regards to what displeases Allah. وَيَعْرِفُ الشَّرَّ. And he does not only suffice on having that knowledge, فَيَجْتَنِبُ. Thereafter, he makes it a point to ensure he refrains from those things which displease Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He ensures that the impermitted boundaries he does not perpetrate. Why? Because it displeases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It displeases my Rabb. So these guidances, this clear-cut guidance that we can find in Kitabullah and Rijalullah of what pleases Allah, what displeases Allah, this is indeed a mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That Allah didn't leave it to me and you to work out. That how can I please Allah? Does this displease Allah or does it not displease Allah? A person would have been left in confusion. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through Kitabullah, through Rijalullah, has made it very clear. If at any juncture of our lives or at any venture that we want to take on, we become confused or we are unaware as to how to please Allah, or does this particular item or does this particular venture of mine displease Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we are unaware, that is due to our lack of knowledge. If we are to resort to Kitabullah and Rijalullah, we will find the answer within that. Does it please Allah or does it displease Allah? Take, for example, the blessing of the tongue which Allah has given us. So Allah has given us the tongue. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't leave it to me and you to now work out how can I use this tongue to please Allah and what is it with the tongue that will displease Allah. Rather, if we look in Quran and Hadith, we will find that use the tongue to read the Quran, use the tongue for dhikr, use the tongue to do salam, use the tongue for amr bil ma'roof, for nahy anil munkar, use the tongue to say some consoling words to someone going through difficulties, or to say kind and loving words to your parents or to your spouse, and you will be rewarded. This will bring you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. At the same time, in the Quran and Hadith, we find that use the tongue for backbiting, for slander, for swearing, vulgar language, abusive language, and this will displease Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Same applies with the hands, with the feet, that you use the hands to touch the Quran, to put a loving hand and caring hand over the head of an orphan. You will be rewarded in the court of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Use the hands for physical abuse or to fulfill your desires in a manner which Allah displeases, and you will be questioned for on the day of Qiyamah. So similarly, today the few words which I would like to share is in regards to the faculty of thoughts. That just how Allah has given us hands, tongue, feet, eyes, and thereafter in Quran and Hadith, if we are to gain the knowledge, we are able to understand how to use these favors to please Allah and what we need to do to refrain from displeasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The same applies with the faculty of dhann, the faculty of thoughts. That the thought process a human has, this can also be used in a manner to please Allah, and it can also be used to become distant from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the thoughts that a person and an insan has, there are some permitted boundaries and there are also impermitted boundaries. So we need to ensure that as a believer, we channel our thoughts within the set boundaries so that we are pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imam Abu Bakr Jassas rahimahullah, in his work on the glorious Quran, has categorized 4 different rulings of the types of thoughts a person has. The first category being that certain thoughts are mubah, i.e. they're permitted. There's some thoughts which he says are mustahab, are favorable. For example, entertaining good thoughts and favorable thoughts about every Muslim. There are some thoughts, the third category he mentions wajib. There are certain masail in the Sharia where a person has to use his thought process and come to a conclusion. But we are not discussing these 3 categories. The category which we would like to share a few words today is in regards to the 4th category of thoughts. And those are haram thoughts, i.e. such thoughts or such a thought process which displeases Allah, which makes us distant from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in some cases, it could lead a person out of the fold of Islam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us our final moments in the state of Iman, in the state of Afiyah, in a state which pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the most. Now these haram thoughts, this 4th category of thoughts, haram thoughts, Imam Abu Bakr Jassas rahimahullah then further categorizes into 2. He says one type of thoughts which are haram is su'ul dhann billah, entertaining negative thoughts in regards to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, distrust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or suspecting his trust. Su'ul dhann billah, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the second category of thoughts which are haram, he says, is su'ul dhann bin nas, with the people. So prohibited to entertain suspicion without any rational grounds about another Muslim whose outer conditions show that they are a person of nobility and they are good. So su'ul dhann billah, entertaining negative thoughts in regards to Allah. And the second category, su'ul dhann bin nas, entertaining negative thoughts about the people. Now in regards to the first category, su'ul dhann billah, that a person entertains distrust and negative thoughts in regards to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, few days before his demise, the advice that we find in the Sunan of Imam Abu Dawud rahimahullah, that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, "La yamutanna ahadukum illa wa huwa yuhsinu dhanna billah." That let it not be that one of you depart from this dunya and you leave the world, but that you are entertaining favorable thoughts in regards to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That ensure that your thought process in regards to Allah and the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is positive. Do not ever come to a stage in your life whereby you let despondency take over you and you start suspecting or you start having distrust in the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. La yamutanna ahadukum illa wa huwa yuhsinu dhanna billah. Which is why you find in the hadith Qudsi, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ana inda dhanni abdi bi, that I treat my servants in accordance to their thoughts in regards to me. The more favorable our thoughts are in regards to Allah, the more benefits we will see in our lives. Which is why sometimes a person goes through difficulties, he faces one calamity. Before that difficulty is alleviated, another calamity. A third calamity befalls, a fourth. And over time, due to weakness in Iman, he starts to now doubt Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah protect us all. The question arises, why me? That when it came to a difficulty, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remembered me. But when it came to giving favors, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remembers Zayd, Amr and Bakr. This indeed is entertaining su'ul dhan with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is what an insan needs to ensure, a believer needs to ensure that he refrains from at all times. Rather, when a believer, if he is firm in his Iman, due to his connection with the Masjid, due to his connection with the ulama, with the mashayikh, due to his connection with the Quran and dhikr, the barakat and the blessings of all these connections will be such that his Iman will be strong. And when his Iman is strong and he faces difficulties and calamities, he will remind himself that the messengers also face difficulties. So this is a sign that Allah loves me. The change in thought process when a person's Iman is strong, that when he is facing difficulties, he remains content. Either through sabr, he entertains patience, he exercises patience, or he exercises even one step ahead. And he does the gratitude of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that, oh Allah, I am deserving of even bigger calamities. But oh Allah, I do your shukr that you sufficed on these small calamities. The change in thought process. But when a person's Iman is weak and he lets these difficulties affect him, then a person starts to entertain negative thoughts in regards to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is a haram in the eyes of Sharia. Similarly, when we make dua, for example, when we turn to Allah and we make dua from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, we find in the Sunan of Imam Tirmidhi rahimahullah, one of the etiquettes of whilst we make dua. What does Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam say? Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, Ud'u Allah, that make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, wa antum muqinuna bil ijaba. Wa antum muqinuna bil ijaba. Make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in such a manner that you have full conviction that Allah will accept your dua. Do not make dua 50-50. That if Allah wants to accept, Allah will accept, and if not, then we'll see what happens. No. When you make dua to Allah, as long as you have the prerequisites of dua which are required, ensure that your sustenance is halal and your lifestyle is halal, and thereafter turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with humbleness. And now when you turn to Allah, have full conviction, muqinuna bil ijaba, that Allah will most definitely accept my dua. So sometimes we make a dua to Allah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for a certain need of ours. Let's take, for example, a youngster has a driving test coming up, and he makes dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that, oh Allah, I have a driving exam the following week, oh Allah, and he ensures that all the prerequisites of dua are found, and he makes dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to pass his test. Came the day of the test, and he fails his exam, he fails his test. So now the believer could think that I made dua to Allah, I ensured all the prerequisites of dua were found. Allah says in the Quran, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي, that when my servant asks from me, فَإِنِّي قَرِيب, I am close. I listen to the servant, I accept their du'as. So why was my dua not accepted? We learn from the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that when a person with all the prerequisites of dua being found makes dua to Allah, Allah most readily accepts his dua. The dua is accepted, but the form in which the dua is accepted can be different. One form and one manner of the dua being accepted is that he passes his exam. And Allah accepts his dua, he passed his exam, finished. The second method in which Allah accepts dua is, Allah accepts the dua. When a person makes dua that, oh Allah, pass me in my driving exam, Allah accepts the dua. but the manner in which the acceptance of the dua is shown is different. Allah shows the acceptance of the dua by removing a calamity which was about to befall. If the person who made the dua to pass his exam in his driving test, if he was to pass, the following week he was going to be facing the calamity of an accident. He was going to be involved in a car accident. Allah accepted his dua, and Allah showed it by not letting him pass, so that the calamity which was about to befall, Allah alleviated from. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala most readily accepts your du'as. But the manner in which the acceptance of the dua is shown is different at times. And the third manner in which Allah accepts dua is, Allah accepts the dua, but it is stored for us in the hereafter. And when the believer reaches the hereafter, and he goes to the court of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it is shown to him that you made these du'as in your life. Some of them were given to you in the dunya, but these du'as which you made in the dunya, Allah accepted, but they were stored for the hereafter. When he sees the reward of every dua which was stored in the hereafter, the insan and the believer will wish, if only all my du'as were saved and stocked for the hereafter, so that this reward I am able to gain in the hereafter. So which is why we should never become despondent of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sometimes another manner in which some people become part of these individuals who entertain su'ud dhan for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, negative thoughts in regards to Allah, is those individuals who have spent their lives in disobedience. Many years have gone in neglect. And then the thought sometimes occurs at good times, for example, during the month of Ramadan, or a close one, a loved one passes away, or they go through certain difficulties or calamities in their lives, and it becomes a waking up call. But at the same time, shaitan now wants to play his tricks. So shaitan then tells the believer that, oh insan, how can you turn to Allah after the life that you have lived? Allah will not forgive you. And then a person starts listening to these whispers of shaitan. So at such a time, instead of entertaining negative thoughts in regards to Allah, that Allah will not forgive me, that is when we need to remind ourselves of the verse which we find in the glorious Quran. Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu was once discussing with his students that which verse in the Quran shows the most mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the students gave their opinions and they discussed different verses. Then Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu said, it is the verse which we find in the 24th juz, wherein Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُلْ يَا عِبَادِيَ الَّذِينَ أَسْرَفُوا عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ. In this verse, let's keep in mind that Allah is talking to those individuals who have spent their lives in neglect, in disobedience. They have done every sin possible to displease Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Despite that, Allah calls them out by saying, Ya ibadi, O my servants. The love with which Allah is calling out these servants, الَّذِينَ أَسْرَفُوا عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ, those who have wronged themselves. لا تقنطوا من رحمة الله. Do not become despondent of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَغْفِرُ الذُّنُوبَ جَمِيعًا. Verily Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives all sins. So when a person starts entertaining distrust that Allah will not forgive me, it's time to remind ourselves that لا تقنطوا من رحمة الله. Do not become despondent of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We find in another hadith Qudsi, wherein Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ibn Adam, O son of Adam, innaka ma da'awtani wa rajawtani ghafartu laka ala ma kana minka wa la ubali. That for as long as you make dua and you turn to me and you have hope in me, we need to have hope in the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in this hadith Qudsi, as long as you have hope in my mercy, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, غَفَرْتُ لَكَ عَلَى مَا كَانَ مِنْكَ وَلَا أُبَالِي. I will forgive all your sins regardless of the amount of sins you come to me with. لَوْ أَتَيْتَنِي بِقُرَابِ الْأَرْضِ خَطَايَا. If you come to me with an earth filled of sins, or you come to me with sins the heights of the sky, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ثُمَّ اسْتَغْفَرْتَنِي. Thereafter you ask me for forgiveness, غَفَرْتُ لَكَ. I will forgive you. So we need to turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all our needs. We need to have hope in the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is limitless. Our intellect may be limited, but the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is limitless. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq and the ability to practice upon these few words. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from amongst those who entertain favorable thoughts in regards to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah protect us from amongst those who have distrust in Allah. Whatever was correct was from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whatever was incorrect, I seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
Mufti Huzaifa, Jazakallah Khair for those words. Alhamdulillah, very inspiring. Alhamdulillah, very powerful. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept it from you as well, and accept Ramadan and all of our ibadat from all of us, inshallah. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us understand, have husnul dhan with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also find the Ahlullah fil ard, inshallah, and to follow them, inshallah, and follow the Quran and the Sunnah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you, inshallah, for taking your precious time out in the month of Ramadan, for being with us. Jazakallah Khair.
Jazakallah.